What up, nerds? My name is Leslie Smith. Welcome to the Nerdy Narrative and another edition of Short Fiction Saturday, which is hilarious because the first story I'm going to talk to you guys about is not short fiction, it is nonfiction. It's an essay out of the newest collection that was published by Zora Neale Hurston, You Don't Know Us Negroes and Other Essays. So the essay that I read out of this one this last week was Characteristics of Negro Expression. In this particular essay, Zora Neale Hurston walks us through different types of behavior, culture, expressions. She even went over dancing. What I found most interesting as a Southerner, somebody who was born and raised in Mississippi all of her life until recently moving to Florida, they never introduced any of the African language into the English language. What they did do was they made over the English language, which was accepted and approved. And so you might be asking yourself, well, what did they do? They softened and toned down the strongly consonant-heavy word. Basically, the birth of the Southern drawl. So I absolutely loved finding that out. The next story I want to talk to you about is the next story in Ted Chiang's Exhalation collection. And it was actually the title story, Exhalation. This is a short story. I want it to be longer. I was left wanting so much more. I wanted to know more about the race that was discussed here, their world. How did they come to be? Where were they? Who created them? I believe what I love the most is in this short story, this intellectual being, possible robot, went on this very involved intellectual journey, exploration, realization, discovery, because of a simple, tiny anomaly. Every year, to start the new year, this town crier would give this 1-hour speech. This particular year, the clock struck the new hour before the speech was over. And it seemed so tiny, but it was wrong. And so this being that the story was about set off on this journey to figure out what was going on. And what they found was so interesting. It was so cool. I loved it. I love this collection. I think this one is definitely going to be a favorite. And then to get back over into Liminal Spaces, which was edited by Kevin Lucia, I read the next story in this one, which is called The Haunted Houses She Calls Her Own by Gwendolyn Keist. I'm not sure. She's a new author to me. Had not heard of her before reading her in this collection, but I'm absolutely going to be reading more about this one. She took the haunted house trope, ghost story, whatever you want to use to describe it. She turned it on its head. She made it work for her in a completely different way. A style I've never read before. I loved it. Instead of a ghost creating a haunted house by haunting an area, the people, the media, we were creating our own stories about how this girl was murdered. And by doing so, we were trapping her in all of the places that our imagination went as far as to how she was murdered and who murdered her. It was amazing. Just mind-blowing. Could not have gotten more outside the box. Absolutely loved it. Well, you know this was coming. For fantasy, I got back into David Wiley's collection, A Merchant in Orient and Other Tales. This past week, I read The Portentious Passenger. This is where it really sunk into me that this collection where David was crafting these fantastic messages in his story. The main character in this story is in the future from us. Not too terribly far, but far enough to be just a little bit different as far as atmosphere. And even though space has been searched and explored, nothing has ever been found to prove there's life out there besides us. That is what this character wants to do. He wants to be accepted into this prestigious academy where he can learn and go out and explore space. He doesn't make it. He's in a lesser academy, and as a result, he has to work to make ends meet. And he's a taxi driver or a shuttle driver. This is a brand new job. His first passenger might be his last passenger. Let's just say it ended up being the ride of a lifetime. Such a great story. And then I also read Sterling City by Stephen Graham Jones. This is my most disappointing read of Stephen Graham Jones. I have been working my way through all of his works ever since I started reading him January of last year when I read The Only Good Indians and fell in love. I have loved everything by this man. Everything has been 4 and 5 stars. No question, I trust his writing. This one was written well. Everything was almost. I did not really care for our main character. I liked the secondary and tertiary characters a little bit. The story had potential. It was almost good. There was something interesting that could have been developed and would have made it better. Maybe this needed to be longer to really go there. But I guess the point of what Stephen Graham Jones was trying to make, he made, and that was the end, and done. So what happens? There's a farmer who doesn't seem to be a very good farmer, definitely not a good husband, because it starts out with his wife running across the field to the neighbor's house. Meanwhile, in space, the US tapping a probe on this rock, maybe it was part of a planet, they're not sure, cracks it open, stuff comes out, starts raining down on Texas. Not raining down like rain, but just stuff hitting here and there. And one of those is a giant caterpillar. The whole time I wasn't really sure if the caterpillar existed or if it was an allegory for something, because the majority of the time we're in the main character's head, the farmer, and he's wondering what his wife is doing at his neighbor's house. He's kind of causing problems with the neighbor. It was almost good. It had potential. I just was not sure what was happening and not really happening because the farmer has a field hand that he never pays. The kid kind of shows up randomly here and there. I was like, is any of this really even happening? So it left me unfinished and disappointed because there was not enough information given to me from my imagination to even craft what was going on. I didn't know what was going on enough to be able to figure out or take it further in my own imagination, if that makes sense. And then to just keep riding on that train of disappointment, the next story I read was from Skeleton Crew by Stephen King. Here there be tigers. Yar! If you can read that title of that short story and not say it in a pirate's accent, my hat is off to you. I can't. This story, where do I begin? So there's a little boy in class. He does not want to ask to go to the bathroom. Like, he is struggling. He is about to bust. And then he's kind of thinking to himself about how his classmates never seem to have to go to the bathroom. He doesn't like his teacher. She's evidently pretty scary. And she finally notices him squirming. And she's like, do you need to go to the bathroom and urinate? And apparently that's embarrassing when she says that word to them and makes them say it. And the bathroom is in the basement, or the bathroom is the basement, but they're not supposed to call it the basement. And there's a tiger in there. And I think it eats the teacher. I'm not sure. I went back to look to see if there was any small print that said what kind of psychedelic drug I needed to take to be able to get that one. It wasn't there. My friend Jake from the Bookish Drummer, who's hosting the Readalong for all of the Stephen King short stories, which I'll have him linked down below if you want to join. Jake maintains the story has charm. I don't see it. And then to wrap up Short Fiction Saturday, I read this morning episode 10 of a mini tale, Sage Under Waves. This one I feel is best summed up by a quote that I took from the story. Sometimes there isn't always a lesson, simply an experience. And in this one, Opaline blips to a world. When he decides to seek out a town for food, he meets these people. They have 4 arms and they love to surf. And the waves are mountainous. So they're like, hey, you want to come go surfing with us? And he's like, sure, why not? They go surfing. They get pulled way out. Next thing you know, the first wave demolishes Opaline. He's underwater. Ends up in the cave of this thing that sounds like a big octopus. The octopus, the sage, tells him that once upon a time, the people he's surfing with hunted its kind. She kind of tricked him into thinking she was this sage and started giving advice, and they believed it, so they stopped hunting her. So I think that's what ties it into. Sometimes there's not a lesson to be learned, it's just an experience. And then she kind of fools them into thinking she's going to send them into a new life, and all she does is just pops them out of the water so that they're out from the underwater cave. So I almost feel like if I think hard enough, there really is a lesson there to be learned. Maybe that lesson is sometimes it's just the experience of doing something. I mean, how many times have we done something knowing we're not going to learn anything from it, but we just want to say we did it once? I know I have. Lots of times. But guys, that's going to wrap up all of the short fiction and nonfiction, the one piece of nonfiction that I read this week. I do realize I read some nonfiction essays, so maybe Short Fiction Saturday isn't a good title for this. You guys got any ideas? What should I call this Saturday endeavor of short literature? Because Short Literature Saturday just doesn't flow like Short Fiction Saturday does. If you have any suggestions, please drop those in the comments down below. Have a fantastic weekend, guys. Take care. I'll see you on Monday.